My brother told me it's just business when he tried to steal our family home, so I exposed his years-long scheme and got the house declared a historical landmark. 3 years ago, my parents passed away within months of each other, leaving behind their Victorian home in Vermont to me, 34M, my older brother Eric, 39M, and my younger sister Sophia, 31F. What started as a shared inheritance has turned into a full-blown family war that I never saw coming. Last week, I was in the attic of our family home sorting through some old boxes when I found something that hit me hard. It was my parents' wedding album, and inside was a photo of them standing proudly in front of the house we all grew up in. On the back was a note in my mom's handwriting: "Our first home together. We hope our children will cherish this place as much as we have." Finding this broke something inside me because I knew what Eric was planning. When our parents died, we agreed to keep the house as a shared family property. We would maintain it together, maybe use it for holidays, or possibly rent it out for extra income. I've been the one handling everything for the past 3 years: property taxes, maintenance, repairs, all the paperwork. Meanwhile, Eric has done absolutely nothing except criticize every decision I make. The roof needed repair? Eric complained about the contractor I hired. The yard needed work? He hated the landscaping company I found. I repainted the living room? He said the color was awful. Yet he never offered to help or contribute financially. Sophia has been mostly absent due to her job that requires constant travel, so she's been uninvolved, but at least she never complained. That left me doing all the work while Eric acted like he was somehow in charge. About 6 months ago, I started to get suspicious of Eric's behavior. He became oddly interested in the property taxes and kept asking about the house's market value. I set up email forwarding for all property-related communications, just to keep track of everything. That's when I discovered something that made my blood boil. Eric had been secretly contacting real estate agents to explore selling the house, without telling me or Sophia. He was planning to force a buyout at a price well below market value. I found emails where he referred to me and Sophia as obstacles that needed to be managed so he could sell the house to developers who were planning a new condo complex nearby. The worst part was finding out he'd been in talks with these developers for over a year. I decided to set up what I called an experiment to expose Eric's true intentions. I called a family meeting at my apartment. Eric came with his wife Rachel, their 2 teenagers Dylan, 16M, and Emily, 14F, and Sophia managed to fly in. I told them all that I had lost my job due to company downsizing and needed to move into the family house temporarily until I found a new position. The reaction was immediate. Eric and Rachel strongly objected, saying the house wasn't suitable for permanent living, despite our parents having lived there for 40 years. Rachel kept saying it would complicate their plans without specifying what those plans were. Sophia just sat quietly, looking uncomfortable. Then Eric said something that I'll never forget. He looked me straight in the eye and said that they didn't want me living in the house without money. It wasn't personal, it was just business. That's when I made my move. I pulled out a folder containing printouts of all the emails Eric had sent to real estate agents, his communications with the developers, and a detailed record of all the expenses I'd paid for over 3 years while he contributed nothing. I also showed them the wedding photo I had found and read out loud what our mom had written on the back. Eric's face went white. Rachel started crying. Sophia finally spoke up, asking why we couldn't respect our parents' wishes. Eric threatened to sue me, claiming I had no right to access his emails. I told them all that I had been talking to potential buyers as well, a lie, and that as an equal owner, I had every right to initiate a sale. I said they had 2 choices: we could have a civilized discussion about selling the house and splitting the proceeds fairly, or we could go to court where I would bring up Eric's attempted deception. I left them to think it over, knowing Eric would explode once I was gone. The truth is, I hadn't lost my job at all. There were no buyers. The whole experiment was designed to bring everyone's true intentions into the light. I felt the weight of our parents' wishes on my shoulders. They wanted us to share this home, to keep it in the family. Instead, Eric was trying to cash in without any regard for what they wanted. I knew this was just the beginning of a major family battle, but I was prepared to fight for what was right. What I didn't know then was just how deep Eric's deception went. Update 1: the past 2 weeks have been absolute chaos. 3 days after our confrontation, I received a certified letter from Eric's lawyer accusing me of acting in bad faith and undermining our joint ownership of the property. The letter threatened to sue me for mismanagement of the property's finances, claiming my repairs were unnecessary and overpriced. It even hinted that they would contest my equal ownership share because of my supposed lack of financial contribution. Meanwhile, relatives I hadn't heard from in years suddenly started texting and calling me with concerns about my behavior. Turns out, Eric and even Sophia had been posting vague messages on social media about family troubles. Sophia wrote a post about praying for her brother during this difficult time and how family is everything even when we don't understand each other's choices. The passive-aggressive nature of it all was infuriating. Rachel took it even further by starting a prayer chain on Facebook for me, making it seem like I was having some kind of breakdown. The manipulation was so obvious it was almost laughable, except that some family members were actually buying into it. Then something unexpected happened. Dylan, Eric's son, showed up at my apartment yesterday afternoon. He was nervous, constantly fidgeting with his phone and avoiding eye contact. When I asked why he was there, he told me something that confirmed my worst suspicions. Dylan said Eric had been obsessively searching through old house documents for the past week. He overheard his dad telling Rachel that he found something that would fix everything. Dylan thought this was weird because usually Eric and Rachel involved the kids in family discussions, but they had been secretive about the inheritance situation from the beginning. Dylan then showed me something incredibly valuable. Last year, I had set up a shared family cloud drive for photos and documents. Dylan had access to it and noticed his dad had recently uploaded scans of old deeds, tax records, and what looked like drafts of revised wills. The most disturbing part was that some documents had signatures from our parents that looked suspiciously fresh. Even more alarming, some were dated after our parents had passed away. I thanked Dylan for coming to me and promised him that I would handle the situation carefully. After he left, I pulled out my own records. What Eric doesn't know is that I never actually listed the house or contacted real estate agents. Instead, I've been methodically documenting everything, all expenses I've paid, all the times Eric and Sophia blocked my suggestions for renting the property, all manipulative communications, and even screenshots of the social media posts. I also had an independent appraisal done showing the property's true value, which was nearly 40% higher than what Eric had been telling us. 2 days later, Sophia came to see me. She looked troubled and asked if I knew anything about a trust. She said she had been going through some of Mom's old papers and found references to a trust that was supposed to hold the house with specific conditions. According to what she found, the house wasn't meant to be inherited directly but was supposed to be in a trust with clear guidelines about its use. When I asked her why we were just hearing about this now, she admitted that Eric had handled all the paperwork after our parents died. He told her it would be simpler to process the inheritance directly rather than deal with trust complications. Sophia seemed reluctant to put any of this in writing, and I got the sense she was afraid of crossing Eric while still trying to maintain some family peace. That evening, I got a text from Rachel asking to meet at the family house tomorrow. She emphasized no lawyers and said it was important. Shortly after, Eric called me sounding uncharacteristically nervous. He tried to play it off as concern for family unity, but I could hear the fear in his voice. I didn't tell either of them that I had already consulted a lawyer who specializes in estate fraud. All my evidence is backed up in multiple secure locations. I plan to go to this meeting fully prepared to confront them with documented evidence of what I now believe is years of manipulation and fraud. The irony is that Eric and Rachel's panic has led them to make mistakes that are providing me with exactly the proof I need. I'm not sure what will happen at tomorrow's meeting, but I know it's going to be revealing. Update 2: I need to explain something I didn't mention before. 5 years ago, before my parents passed, I took a leave of absence from work to help care for my mom during her illness. Dad was struggling to manage on his own, and Sophia was overseas, while Eric was too busy with his own life to help. During that time, Mom had what her doctors called clear days, days when her mind was sharp despite her illness. On one of these days, she grabbed my hand and told me about a blue folder in her desk that contained documents about a trust for the house. She made me promise to find it if anything happened to her and Dad. She specifically mentioned being worried about Eric trying to take advantage of the situation. I remembered her words, but in the grief and chaos after their deaths, I forgot about the blue folder until Sophia mentioned the trust. The meeting at the house was tense from the start. Rachel arrived first, acting unusually friendly and conciliatory. Eric showed up later trying to seem calm but failing miserably. Sophia came last, clearly nervous about what was about to happen. Rachel and Eric started by trying to downplay everything. Eric suggested we could all move past this misunderstanding and come to a reasonable arrangement that would benefit everyone. What he meant, of course, was an arrangement that would benefit him. Before they could continue their pitch, I connected my laptop to the TV and played a video from Dad's 70th birthday party 3 years before he died. In the background of the video, you could clearly hear Eric talking to his friend about the house. Once the old folks are gone, I'll handle the paperwork. Mark and Sophia won't know what hit them. This place will be worth a fortune after the new luxury condos go in next door. While they sat in shocked silence, I pulled out the original copy of the trust documents, the blue folder my mother had told me about. I had found it hidden in a box of Christmas decorations labeled ornaments, fragile, a box that I had helped my mother pack away every year. The trust stipulated that the house must be maintained as a family property for at least 15 years after both parents passed, with any sale proceeds before that time being partially donated to my parents' favorite charities. Any changes to the arrangement required unanimous agreement from all 3 siblings. Eric tried to defend himself, claiming he was just trying to protect our investment by taking advantage of the development opportunity. That's when Sophia revealed her own bombshell. She had been checking Dad's old email account and found correspondence between Eric and the development company dating back 4 years, while our parents were still alive. Eric had been feeding the developers inside information in exchange for preferential treatment when the time came to sell. Rachel broke down completely. Between sobs, she kept repeating that Eric had told her it was just business and that she never knew how far he had gone. I laid out my terms. We would follow the original trust as our parents intended. Eric would be removed from any property decisions. An independent manager would handle any rental income. There would be no discussion of selling for at least 15 years, and Eric would sign a written admission of his document fraud. I made it clear that if he refused, I would take all the evidence of trust fraud to the authorities. Faced with the overwhelming evidence and the threat of legal consequences, Eric signed the agreement I had prepared. After Eric and Rachel left, Sophia asked why I hadn't told her about my suspicions earlier. I simply told her that she wouldn't have believed me over Eric. She didn't argue with that. As we sat on the porch, listening to the distant sound of construction equipment from the neighboring property, I thought about how my mother had known exactly where to hide those documents so I would find them. I planned to finalize the trust arrangement exactly as our parents intended, but I have a feeling this isn't the last we'll hear from Eric. Update 3: The situation with the family house has finally reached a resolution, though not the one any of us expected. What Eric never knew was that one of the potential buyers I mentioned was actually a representative from the State Historical Preservation Society. I had been quietly working with them for months, providing evidence of the house's historical significance and documentation of the development company's pressure tactics on local homeowners. The society was interested because our house is one of the few remaining original Victorian homes in the area, with architectural features rarely seen anymore. 2 weeks after our confrontation, the Historical Society succeeded in getting the house designated as a protected historical landmark, which effectively halted the development company's plans for the entire neighborhood. The fallout for Eric has been significant. Rachel filed for divorce after discovering that Eric had taken out a second mortgage on their home to invest in property adjacent to the development, property that is now worth far less without the planned luxury condos. Sophia has been fully cooperative with setting up the proper trust administration, providing additional documentation she found in our parents' papers. Dylan and Emily have been staying with me on weekends while Rachel sorts out her life. Last weekend, we baked Mom's famous apple spice cake together, and Dylan asked if I had planned everything all along. I told him I had planned just enough. The original trust has been formally reinstated with me as the primary trustee. Eric's lawyer dropped him as a client after learning about the forged documents. Eric's reputation in the community has taken a serious hit, especially after the development company filed a lawsuit against him for misrepresenting his authority to negotiate on behalf of our property. The house is now being restored with grant money from the Historical Society, and we've already had inquiries about including it in the annual Historical Homes Tour. I moved into the garden apartment on the property to oversee the restoration work and to fulfill my role as trustee. I bought a pair of binoculars that let me see all the way to the edge of what would have been the development. Instead, it remains the nature preserve our parents always loved. I see families walking there daily, enjoying the space that would have been destroyed. A local newspaper is doing a feature on how ordinary citizens like me helped preserve the neighborhood's character against aggressive development. When they interviewed me, I showed them the contrast between our parents' wedding photo and Eric's emails referring to Sophia and me as obstacles to progress that needed to be cleared out. Dylan made a drawing of the house with 3 stick figures in front, him, Emily, and me. He wrote underneath, "The ones who actually care about Gran and Gramps' house." Smart kid. I sent identical messages to both the development company's legal team and Eric. I kept better records than you thought. It wasn't personal. It was just business. The Historical Society lawyer, a sharp woman with a dry sense of humor, appreciated the irony in my thorough documentation. She also loved our mom's apple spice cake recipe. In the end, the house stays in the family as our parents wished. The neighborhood remains preserved. Eric faces the consequences of his actions. And I sleep soundly in the house where I grew up, knowing that while our family may be fractured, our parents' legacy remains intact.